Good afternoon, or good morning, PBA, thank you.
Hold on a second, sorry.
That's okay. Good morning, PBA, thank you for coming all the way here to 10 to do negotiations today, we appreciate it. We know we sent you the proposals late last night. Obviously, with the start of school, we've been a little busy with a lot of things going on. So what we want to do is kind of walk you through what proposals we sent you. We took the language that you provided us for that we feel are tentative agreements, so we might be able to reach tentative agreement on. And maybe we go through those first and see what we can sign off on. Is that okay?
So we just talked about all the TAs, and if you want, I can just kind of go through. We made a few.
That would be great.
Okay. So I'm just going to go through, and we pulled a few that I think we need more in-depth conversation about.
Sure.
So for Article 6, I think that we can TA this, but for 6.3, I wanted to add, no item shall be placed by the PBA or the district, their designees or members, without being approved by the PBA president and reviewed by the chief of police, because the guys were just voicing to me that the district does use the bulletin board sometimes. So we didn't want, there to be any issue with who put what on the board if there is an issue coming about, so.
Okay, let me ask AC Weiner, is that an issue? I don't know what else you put on the board. Usually bulletin boards will have like their typical EEOC flyers that we have to put up for federal law purposes. I don't know if that's what's on the bulletin board.
That's the only thing I'd be aware of.
Okay, so as
You
long
guys
as,
were saying that there's some random stuff up there a lot of times, right?
Yeah. Put it this way, we're the only 3 reps in the district, and we haven't touched that bulletin board in over 3-4 years, but yet there's different stuff on it from time to time.
So we just don't want, the
So-
PBA being blamed for something weird up there, basically.
Okay.
So we're not at the DAC, so we don't have access to the bulletin board. So for us to actually go there, it'd have to be like, to post something up, it'd have to be, which we haven't posted anything on that bulletin board in years. And yet, there's different stuff being taken up, put down, taken up, put down. Some of it's PBA related, so I don't know who's been doing it. It's not the PBA, it's not any of us, and it's not Kaz coming down from the PBA to touch that bulletin board. So somebody up in headquarters is doing it.
Yeah, but we don't know who that is. It could be a member, it could be.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah,
anybody.
so that's why we just added that, because we don't want, the
Yeah,
PBA
I'm not saying
board
it's
to be
it's management, I'm
blamed
just
for
saying
something
somebody's
weird.
doing it, it's not us.
So
okay, I
that's-
mean, we can put that on there. I'm just concerned with, if you guys are saying there's stuff on there that you didn't put on there, if you just bring it to our attention, we can take it down. So I don't see a problem with doing that.
Okay. And then 6.8, I ended that sentence after seniority list to just read, the district agrees to furnish the association upon request such
Okay, we're at
information.
6.8.
Yes, such information as is necessary for developing intelligent, feasible, and constructive proposals. This information may include, but is not limited to, such items as bulletins, annual financial reports, audits, tentative budget proposals, and tentative budget proposals once made public, and seniority lists, so.
So you want tentative budget proposals in there twice?
Or no, and tentative budget proposals once made public, and seniority lists, period. And then just take out the whole email thing. I think it's just becoming more of a
Okay.
issue than benefit, so.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
So that's what I have for 6. And then the next, Article 8, involuntary transfer. This, I think we had the same exact thing, so we're fine with that.
Okay,
Just allowing the chief to allow for adequate time for those officers who have been assigned to a different work location to relocate department and personal belongings to that new work location.
all right, sounds good.
And then Article 10, we TA'd, that's status quo for seniority, layoffs, and recall rights.
Okay,
And then 26.1, we also TA'd, I just had the one change for page 23, step 4, arbitration procedure. So I just wanted to take out, so it says, if the grievance has not been satisfactorily resolved at step 3, only the PBA may submit the grievance to arbitration in writing no later than 10 working days after the date the Director of Labor Relations response is due. Period. I took out or received by the grievant because I just, like last time I explained, it makes it kind of confusing for me. I calendar things and they don't always get it back to me right when they get it.
Right,
so.
and the reason why we were adding that is because we do have times where either side can ask for a extension. So that would be problematic if we've agreed, like, okay, it was due on Monday, we're gonna get it to you on Tuesday, everybody's fine with that.
This just kind of makes it more of a concrete deadline.
Okay.
In my view. So that's the only change I had for 26.
Okay, I
And-
think we can agree to that.
Okay. And then for 28 definitions, we were fine with everything except for 13, because I think that our members are worried about the actual change to the work week.
Well, this was at your request, because when we talked about the work day, it was, as it was explained to us in a previous bargaining session, is officers didn't know when the work week began, right? So when does payroll, and this is just for payroll purposes, so when does your work week begin? My work week begins on Saturday and runs through Friday. That's for payroll. On Friday, payroll closes for that week. So that's, we thought you had requested that language.
No, I don't think we did. I think it was really just the timeline thing for 10C.
Okay.
Yeah. So we would be fine with everything but 13.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk a little bit about it, because I know there is some confusion for officers who maybe work on a Saturday and go, okay, I'm supposed to get overtime on the Saturday job.
Yeah,
They
it
don't get
shouldn't be though, because it's actually spelled out every single 2 weeks that they,
Yeah.
actually, Chief Weiner puts out the thing per chief. Well, the Childers put it out on behalf of the chief and says this is the day your overtime
period.
starts
Yeah, pay
from.
period.
This day to this day, and it's spelled out every 2 weeks.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's not an issue.
Okay, so it's not an issue, we can take that out.
Okay. And then, so the next one is 29, progressive discipline. And so for this, you all added excluding verbal warning / written warning. And we would be fine with that, but we just want it to kind of mirror 3 to mirror 8. So if you do add that for 3, we wanted to keep A and have it read verbal warning documented by a written notation not filed in personnel file.
Okay, so hold on a second, so you wanna put the verbal warning back in, because we had thought we had agreed we were taking that out.
Well, I thought we were taking it out of 3 as well.
Okay, we can take it out of 3. I think we just missed that one, so we can certainly do that.
Are you guys okay with that?
Is that removing a step?
It is removing a step.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be okay with that.
Well, I'm confused because what we had received from you before, that was language you guys had given us. So now you're taking the language you put on the table back off the table?
I thought you were fine with getting rid of verbal warning.
I thought we just caucused and said we weren't.
Do you want to explain?
Yeah. Are we taking the step away, a verbal warning? So if an officer does something minute,
We thought, I
instead of
guess,
giving a verbal warning, now it's gonna be a written reprimand? So that's the whole point
I
of
thought-
Well,
having
the
it in.
first step of progressive discipline is the written warning. In almost every unit we have, that's, it starts with, we only have 4 steps. So it's really, it's usually a verbal warning with written notation, which is what you guys are calling a written warning. Then we have a written reprimand, suspension, and termination. And all the other contracts and non-bargaining, we have those 4 steps. Now, prior to getting to that first step, there is, in most cases, not all, because it depends on the severity of what the employee did, there's usually some kind of memo or conference or something that the employee is given a directive or something is explained to the employee. It is part of our verbal coaching, it's part of coaching people up.
And that's why we want it in
It's
there.
not punitive.
well, I
Yeah.
think the confusion is just about whether or not that was going to be taken out in practice, and they were saying that the
Yeah.
verbal warning is actually documented by like a form.
Yes.
Right, because right now, it's a verbal warning with written notation. It's a step in progressive discipline. So rather than doing maybe the coaching, they go to this first step.
Okay,
So-
so I think that's what we were confused about.
Yeah.
So because it's staying in practice, then we would just keep it both in 3 and 8.
I mean, Chief,
So just so I'm clear, so you'd rather be disciplined than coached?
Well, we don't want to take it out of the definition of discipline if it's actually being documented
Well,
by a
verbal
form
is
in a
coached
negative
anyway, isn't it?
way.
Well, coaching's not discipline at all.
Yeah, coaching's not even
If-
addressed in here.
Yeah,
Correct,
so then what do you
because
wanna
it's
put it
not
down
So
as
we're not,
coaching?
yeah, right, we're not
Yeah,
asking
so
for
we're
that.
just
very
talking
well.
about the verbal warnings.
Yeah, you can put it down as coaching, then you can call it whatever you wanna
Well,
call it,
if
but
we-
verbal is still coaching.
Well, no, because if it's in here, it's discipline.
Right.
In this section, it is discipline.
Right,
Because
We
coaching is
can
not
coach you all day
documented
long,
by
it
a
doesn't turn
form.
into discipline.
correct,
We can coach you 3 times,
right,
right? It's all coaching, mentorship, right?
sure,
Retraining.
yes.
Once we go to verbal warning, you're in the discipline channel.
So then we
So
should
we were
keep it.
taking that, we would rather do all of the other rather than verbal warnings. If you want to keep verbal warnings in, I don't see how that helps your membership.
Well, we want
It
to
do-
keep it in if it's actually being used against them in
Yeah.
a negative disciplinary way, so that it's in the definition of
But
discipline.
it's not. We haven't been using verbal warnings for discipline.
Yeah, the coaching is coaching. It's part of,
They have.
people growing in their position to
think-
help them make sure they understand what the rules are, if the rules are vague, or if maybe there's a new GEO they didn't know about, hey, this is the new GEO.
So do you want to, would you all be fine with changing verbal warning to coaching?
If we put
No.
coaching in here, then it becomes discipline. This
No.
section is on discipline.
Well, they're saying that verbal warning is discipline, and
It
it's
is,
used, so then
right
we should
here,
keep
a
it.
verbal warning, as we use it now, is discipline. We
So
were
then-
taking that out.
Right.
It creates a 4-step disciplinary process. Obviously, if we can, we're gonna do coaching prior to that. But in this case, this is a 5-step.
But who makes the decision on coaching and
The
verbal?
supervisor would.
Okay,
And it really
that's-
deals
and that's
with-
the question, so then we have nothing to fall back on, it's basically their judgment call, and there's nothing we can, they can skip right over coaching and go
Right.
right to this.
Yeah, that's right, they can, but
Right.
it depends on the issue at heart, right? Here's
And
the,
I
here's
get
the
what-
other, but here's the other, let me finish. Here's the other challenge, right? Is that if we want to make sure that we've got the verbal warning out of the way going forward, the verbal warning is going to be the first thing we do before we do any coaching. We're going to give you a verbal warning, and then we're going to coach you a little bit. Because then the verbal warning's we've already started down the discipline.
So you're gonna reprimand before you teach?
That's what you're telling me you want.
No,
No.
it's not. Verbal warning, if you leave it in here because it is discipline, it should be in here, and it should be one of the types of discipline that should be for just cause. So it's really, it is a
Yeah,
protection.
we're not,
because-
I'm not trying to be difficult, I just, this is a confusing article itself, but it's a step, it's one other step before you start getting into the serious steps. So why would we, I wouldn't want to remove a step.
Well, all I'm saying is, this is the proposals we got from you. We
Well, because-
tailored ours based on what you asked for in the last several sessions. You wanted that removed.
Well, we thought that it wasn't gonna be used in practice anymore, I guess is what the misunderstanding.
Yeah, it was a
Well,
misunderstanding, so let's
look,
just keep it. That's it.
There's not going to be a verbal warning. The first step in progressive discipline is a written warning with this section. This does not foreclose us from doing more coaching and having conversations with employees. We do that in all the other bargaining units, non-bargaining, is usually there's a conference notes or a memo before, but it depends on the severity of what they did. So if an employee you're found sleeping in your car, that's not something we counsel somebody about. That's a safety issue. That is, you should know that you're being paid to be alert and attentive. You're not being paid to sit in your car and smoke a cigarette or have a nap, right?
Well, so if verbal warning isn't discipline in practice, then it shouldn't be.
That's not what I'm saying.
Then
That
it
is
should
not
be
what
in
we're
there.
saying. What we're saying is that currently it is disciplinary. That's what we're doing. So what happens is they go straight to progressive discipline because that is the first step, verbal warning.
They don't have to go
When the
straight,
first
they
step
could
is
coach
written
before.
warning,
So here's the challenge. The challenge is if you take if you keep verbal warning in there, verbal warning is going to be used in lieu of coaching. That's
That
the
sounds
risk.
like a punitive thing.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
good.
think
Because
that
if an
making it
officer,
a
if an officer
mandatory-
forgets to sign a page on the PC where it could have been a coaching said, hey, listen, you forgot to sign that one page, But now you're gonna say, we're gonna do
Nothing in here
Yeah.
limits their ability to do a coaching.
Yeah,
correct. I'm just a little concerned about, bargaining in
That's
good
what-
faith
that's
when
what
we
you clarified.
tailored our proposal
Well, but
because
we
of
made
what
a
you
mistake
asked
there.
if we're
for.
explaining to you that we didn't understand it
Well, we thought it was being
clearly.
taken out of practice. I guess that's where the misunderstanding lied. Because if it is being used as discipline, then it should be in the discipline.
What's being used as discipline because it's in the discipline now. That's why it's being
Right.
used as discipline. If it's not in here, then that's not discipline anymore.
Yeah, and it eliminates one step.
Correct. Now, by what the chief had said, are you indicating that by the verbal warning being in here, that it negates a
You have to
supervisor?
keep your mask up over
I
your nose, please.
understand. I have respiratory problems, so I do that, that's why. So are you saying that a supervisor can no longer coach, or that's a term you like to use, for a minor indiscretion and has to jump right to step A, verbal warning written notation? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that there's a likelihood that that might be the case.
There's a likelihood, but
Likelihood.
it's still a tool that they have on their belt, that
That's
they
right.
can coach, mentor, whatever way you want to describe it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the preferred way. The preferred way is
Right,
coaching and
exactly.
mentoring,
I just want that on record because
But
it
if we
didn't
have- if we
didn't come
have-
across that way.
which is not drafting those. If we have verbal warning in there, it's a step in that we have to evaluate, when do we want to use it?
Right,
It may be used earlier because it's a lesser,
correct. Right,
As long as you
I agree with
understand
you,
that.
right.
okay.
So therefore, it'll still, the supervisor will still be able to coach or
That's
mentor,
correct.
whatever term you
Even if
want to
we have
use.
verbal.
And then if it's something more egregious, they have the right supervisory right
no
to jump
different
that and go to A.
We misunderstood the way
Yeah.
we thought it was meant
There's
the first
nothing
time,
bad
so.
faith here.
No.
We're trying to understand
Well, it's
what's
just,
going on.
it's kind of confusing for us when we tailor our responses based on what you've requested, and then we come in and go, yeah, that's not what, we didn't know what we were requesting.
Well, it's confusing for me when you put verbal warning back
Yeah.
in 3, if it,
Well, that was
then it-
just,
then it
that
should be
right there
A.
is just a typo, because
Oh,
if
so we
you had
made a
asked us,
typo
we could have
mistake
told
then.
you
I
that
mean,
that
it's just
should
a
have been
mistake on our part. We're
stricken.
willing to admit that.
Not to beat a dead
So we
horse.
want to leave it.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have to.
Okay.
So we'll have to talk about that and get back to you on 29 then.
Okay.
Okay, and then 30, we TA'd.
Okay.
Obviously, there's something very strong that you're believing on that for some reason, that we're arguing over one step on it.
Yes.
No, it's just, look, the way labor relations works and bargaining works is we trust each other. And
Absolutely.
so when we get proposals from you, we put a lot of effort into it, just like your team does, is to tailor our proposal to try to reach agreement. And so since we started, we've been getting that from your team that cross this out. And so we did, we've done what you asked, and now we're being told you didn't. It's not a big deal. We're gonna go back and talk about it and see if this is something that we can do or not do, and we'll get
Okay.
back to you on it.
Well, we want 3 and 8 to mirror each other and to mirror the actual
Correct.
practice.
And
so-
what I explained to you was that in 3, that verbal reprimand should have been crossed out. It was in a prior document, but for some reason, when we've been moving things in Google Docs, it has been deleting things, and like I told you before, in 18.3, the header was now in the middle of the page. So that was something that we had stricken, but if you wanna keep it in there, then we'll talk about it.
Are we going to touch up on those other ones? Or?
Yeah, so now we'll just have to go through. So do you want to caucus, or do you want to go through
No,
everything?
we'll go through the rest of them. I think we did not get a response from you on Article 12 that was part of the packet,
Right, we want to change probation to 12 months.
and we're not interested in changing it, we wanna keep the status quo.
Okay. So I don't know if we can make an agreement on that.
No.
And what about the paid leaves in 18?
So 18, for B, sick leave, page 11, they want 11 days or 88 hours.
We have that in there, and, well, in B1, it says a minimum of 11 days, and it has a parentheses, 88 hours exclusive of overtime.
Okay, so I think that they just want you to voice,
It's the same
intent.
thing, it's just like at the top, it has 4 days,
Right.
we have 32 hours in parentheses, we have it
Well-
further down than 8 hours, we have 96 hours in
I
lieu of
get it,
12
I get
days.
it. But Kevin, can you voice what
Yeah.
the issue is?
The issue is the following, is that it all pertains to 1 month throughout the year in July. I understand that it says that we have to work 11 consecutive tours, which is 88 hours, to get a sick day. That's what this is all about. Our contention is we wish to have the following, that it be that compensable leave 11 days and/or 88 hours. So that means that it would enable which has been past practice for many, many years, that when we used to work the 410s, for example, in July, we would work, in the month of July, we got credited with 8 hours on July 4th. We would work Monday through Thursday, 10-hour tours for 2 consecutive weeks, and that would have been our 88 hours. This had become an issue just under the tenure of Chief Kitzrow. Prior to that, it was never an issue. Does that clarify it?
It does, but do you want me to change it in all the other places too, where we have 4 days? You want and/or 32 hours, where it has 1 day
No,
and/or 8 hours?
this is just pertaining
Yeah,
to the
just
sick.
that place would be good.
The sick. 'Cause that's what it comes down to, is 1 month out of the year where it creates an issue. And it never was an issue until the last
Okay,
2
I mean,
years.
That's 3 years.
All right.
Not the last 11 before I was here, which we have the district calendars which show that.
All right, is there anything else in 18?
3, I was just wondering, because I thought you didn't want disability caused by, so I was wondering why you put that back in
What are you talking about in 3?
for pregnancy.
I have to look. Did we
Can you give
previously-
us the page number?
It's on 11.
11.
the same page.
Last paragraph.
I think that's another spot where maybe the
It was
strike through
taken out
didn't.
earlier.
Yeah, where the strike through didn't come through. So, yeah, we can certainly remove that, because it's really absence due to disability, by pregnancy, miscarriage, abortion, childbirth, or recovery therefrom. It's not really a disability.
Okay. Next page, I think we're fine with all that, right, guys? So 4, we're fine with the 2 hours notice. I don't have that updated copy in front of me, but I think that we can just add when possible. Obviously, emergencies happen, so when possible, all other requests for sick leave should be made at least 2 hours in advance.
Now, that's implied by the word should. Should is, they should do it. If we were gonna put when possible, we'll change should to must, and then except in emergency circumstance or in the event of emergency like above.
Over here, you have shall, don't you?
We had should. We had all other requests for sick leave should be made at least 2 hours in advance. If you wanna add the caveat in case of emergencies, then we'll change it to a direct, so it's a requirement, and then except in emergencies, we can do that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 9 is fine. Doctor's note.
All right.
And then page 13, that's fine. 14, that's no changes. 15, that's fine. So 16,
What page are you on?
page 16.
Okay.
So this, I think, is where they wanted to talk to you about the COVID, because if all, not all of the bargaining units are being treated the same, they want to, if they get COVID twice, they want the same benefits
Yeah.
that the CPA has.
Okay, CTA and ASOP have a provision that's been in their contract for well over 2 decades that have leave while quarantined. We are not interested in putting that in any other group right now. You have the district has been generous enough to extend that 10 days paid leave through the end of September, extending that Federal CARES Act leave that expired back, I don't know when it was, December of last year. We've kept extending that for all other groups. It's a very expensive proposition. That was language that we're trying to figure out when that was put in the contracts and why it was put in the contracts, because the way it's written is unwieldy. It's almost impossible to manage. It's expensive. And it's something that we're gonna probably start talking about taking out of other contracts. They're not being given a benefit, right? It's a contractual obligation that we have.
So my response, so therefore, employees are not all being treated in a fair and equitable manner.
Well, they also
answer
get
is
paid a
yes.
different rate of pay than you do. Bus drivers get paid $15 an hour. Your unit gets paid substantially higher. It's contractually, it has been negotiated into the contract.
And that's what we're here for, to negotiate. So therefore, what's going to happen to our members, if you get COVID and you use up your 10 days and you get it again, you have to start using your own sick time, which should have in an officer's mind that I might have to change the way that I perform my duties because my employer is not backing me as a law enforcement officer, an emergency first responder, to address a condition that I have to be more concerned about my health now, because if I'm sick and get COVID, and that I have to start using my own time. So this is not a good thing for law enforcement. I'm amazed that this is being used against us as first responders.
It's not being used against you. It's
Sure it
not
is.
in your contract. We have not gotten a single
We're here
proposal.
negotiating
Okay,
a contract.
Mr. Officer O'Sullivan,
We're here to negotiate.
I got it. Where's your
So let-
proposal on that issue?
I'm
We have
telling you,
not
we just got it last
If
night.
you would let me speak, sir. We have not received a proposal from you.
Because I just
The-
got
We
my
just got it
COVID for
last night.
teachers
The
But-
provisions
yesterday.
in CTA's contract and ASOP's contract have been in there for decades. This is not something new. You guys bring to us all the time, well, CTA gets this, it's in their contract. We've seen that in these proposals. So if it was something that you wanted, you should have brought it to the table in the beginning of saying this is something we want.
We just got it last
Yeah,
night.
this wasn't at our first bargaining session, was it?
I have
No, because it's been, we're not bringing to you everything that's in any contract that we have going, oh, well, CTA gets this benefit, the bus drivers get this benefit, do you want this
The
as
only reason
well?
we know it's in
We
the
negotiate
contracts.
it because it is in their contracts. Now, you guys have thoroughly gone over CTA's contracts because what I get, and we can go back and look at the tapes from just this group of bargaining sessions, was, well, this is in CTA's contract, we took the language directly from CTA. We've heard that at the table here. So to say that, well, you know, weren't aware, well,
Well, we're allowed to bring up new things.
You
and the
absolutely-
Delta
well-
You don't want us to
variant
use
is
other
a new
police officer
thing.
contracts because we're not, technically a traditional police department, but then you don't want us to use a CTA contract.
I didn't
mean,
say that, Officer Lynch. That is not what I've said.
But everything we bring up, we tell you that this is in another
Well, what I
contract, you
have
say to us,
to-
well,
what-
we can't do that.
Right, what I have told
We
you
don't give it
is.
to our other groups.
This doesn't happen in a vacuum. I just
I-
got the policies this week and there's a new variant out. So maybe a middle ground would be an extra 10 days because
We
people are
cannot
getting.
afford to do that. We can't afford to do that.
I have a question.
That's-
Are we still covered on the workman's comp if we catch this type of an illness at
No,
work?
because work comp no longer covers COVID because a vaccine is available.
Okay. That's,
All right, well,
that's,
we'll have to talk more about
No,
that.
Okay.
that's unacceptable, disrespectful to it. Something our members really have to think about now. I appreciate that dialogue.
Well, Officer O'Sullivan, it's two groups that have it. Non-bargaining does not have it. SEIU does not have it. Principals, APs, they don't have it either. So
Correct, they
it's-
don't do our
So
job.
non-bargaining wouldn't have it.
Right, but you don't do their job, sir.
Correct. That's what I'm here to say. I'm a police officer. If this was to happen, I'm gathering in a local municipality, they wouldn't just get 10 days and then say, the heck with you, use your own sick time.
Well, can you provide the policies from the other units that show that?
Well, I'm going to, yes. I'm
Okay,
going
that
to
would
work
be
like hell to
great.
get it.
Other police departments we look.
Other
Yes.
police departments that give you unlimited paid leave if you contract COVID. That's what we're looking for, because that's what you're
That might
asking
be
for.
the-
So,
Unlimited paid leave.
We're not
Before you
asking
get
for
COVID.
unlimited.
No.
I just said maybe an extra 10 days and you said we're not open to that.
Right, we're not open to that, because
Okay.
right now we're already
So
giving
then what do we
2
need to
weeks.
provide it for then?
yeah, if you're not, I won't waste my time.
Well,
If you're not
yeah.
open to it.
We
So-
want to see what you
If you
have,
don't
and
want
we
to
can.
negotiate.
If you're not open, you don't want to negotiate in good faith over something that has to do with.
Look, you're not even letting me speak, and I don't know what happened.
Just based on your
because this was
term,
not
all due
the-
respect.
This was not
We're not
the
open to
attitude we
that.
got at the last one. What I'm telling you is an extremely expensive proposition, that it costs millions of dollars that we are paying right now for those provisions in the contract that were never used before, that were those kind of provisions in the contract that we didn't even realize that why they're there. In fact, for the years that I've been here, when I started back almost 19 years ago and looked at it, well, this is a weird provision, why is it in there?
Okay.
And we thought about taking it out year after year after year, but we just didn't get around to it because what difference did it make? We're never going to be having people in a pandemic and a quarantine because
Right.
it was not even something that we thought of. As far as I know, I don't think we had a school district during the Spanish influenza back in 1918, but that could have been when that got put in there
Well,
because it
did-
is that old.
Didn't you
So-
bargain with CTA this year and that just wasn't?
No, we've been bargaining with CTA, but that language that's in there has been in there for a very long time. We're gonna go back and research it when we have time to go back through all the contracts we have to see when that got put in there, because it's been longer than 20 years.
So somebody was thinking that well ahead, that was a good job of whoever
Yeah.
put that in there. So we're thinking the same thing, and nobody would have thought, we wouldn't bring this up right now if we didn't have a pandemic right now.
Well, here's what could occur, though, then the district wouldn't be providing the 10 days paid leave that they've been doing all along if you had provision in your contract for it. So we have been doing what we can, but it's not like we have an unlimited pot of money to just start paying people, because 10 days is a significant amount of money.
I have another question. Hepatitis, there's a vaccination for it, a vaccine. So as law enforcement officers, if we can prove that we caught it, even though we were vaccinated, we still caught hepatitis at work, that would be covered under workman's comp, correct?
Correct, and
So why
COVID would be
wouldn't this?
covered, but you have to prove beyond, for clear and convincing evidence, as it was explained to us yesterday, clear and convincing evidence that you contracted it at work. So you're gonna have to show that you've been nowhere else. You have not been to a gas station, to a grocery store, around anybody else who'd been around anybody else and gone to a grocery store or a gas station. It's a very high standard. It is not a standard we created, it is a standard that's in Florida statute. So when there's not a vaccine, it's different. When a vaccine becomes available, you have to be able to show by clear and convincing evidence that you caught it while at work, which is gonna be extremely hard, given the level of positivity in this community.
So
Well,
would
they
we
could-
be
they
able,
could-
if we had COVID, though, would we be able to go back to work?
No.
Why though?
Then
You're
why
gonna
not?
prevent us from going back to work, but
If you have a positive test per CDC guidelines in policy 3.82,
what if
there
I
is a
don't wanna lose
certain.
money, though? I
I'm
mean,
sorry?
I mean, you're forcing,
They're
you're
making
forcing
you
our
use your
hand.
sick time.
I have no sick time. I've been directed to stay home for 10 days contrary. I'm losing money. So therefore, I don't have no money to pay my insurance benefits and et cetera, out of my paycheck, because I'm being directed, you must stay home by my employer.
So you think it'd be okay then for an officer who is COVID positive to come to a meeting at PBA?
You know what? If they have to pay their bills, they have to do whatever they feel is necessary. That's what my job is not to look out for the school
Well, sir,
district.
then I am very sad to hear that from you as a public school employee, that you would
Well,
not
that's okay.
care about the teachers, about the students, that you think that because you have bills to pay, that you're willing to sacrifice the public health and the good of all of our students?
I said that that person has to make that decision.
We're
I
not
feel it's
gonna
very
reach an
sad.
agreement on that, so let's just move.
No, I just, and here, I do have a follow-up. How many CTA ASOP members have used more than 10 days under this clause, to your knowledge?
I don't have any of that data,
Well,
that's through payroll.
If we can ask that for the next meeting, because that will help our
My
discussion.
suggestion was you could make a public records request for that information.
Or we could
and
just
can
ask the
certainly do
school
that.
district to maybe access this, because so we discuss this to see really how much of a financial burden it is to the school district.
We can certainly let you know.
Yes.
Can you make a note to ask Nancy Samuels for the data that we
And
have?
just as we wouldn't care about the employees, apparently the employer doesn't care about their employee, that
Yes.
they're gonna make them, force them
To make a
you know,
decision.
It's a
make
public
decision.
health crisis.
I get you. I agree with you on 100%.
We agree, but I'm saying.
So, but you're
That's why,
coming
you
to
know-
the table with this idea that the employer, because of a public health a global pandemic, if you're sick and you want to come to work when you could contaminate hundreds of kids at a school because you guys are wandering and at the schools walking around and interacting with the kids, you could conceivably shut down an entire school and you're okay with that because we're not paying you.
We didn't say we were-
No, you put words in my mouth. I said that person has to make a decision, right? They're being told to stay home, directed by their employee. You will stay home, but you're not getting paid. That person might not have, I don't want to use the term I was just going to use, is that they will have to make a financial decision. What is best for me and my family? If I have no income, how am I going to put food on my table? How am I going to keep the lights on and such? That is what I said. That person will have to make a decision. I did not say that they must come to work. That is an imperative decision that each individual has to make for his or her family, which comes number one in life.
Are you doing the 10 days? If there's a known exposure, you have to do a mandatory 10 days?
The 10 days is, well, the 10 days paid is whether you are exposed or have a positive test.
No,
where you
I'm
get the 10
saying
days paid.
if you are exposed, are you required to quarantine
Yes,
home for
per
10 days?
CDC guidelines and policy 3.82, which was a duly enacted school board policy.
Because other
What if you had
agencies
the
are
vaccine?
doing it, if you just had an exposure, that you
It
just stay
depends, well,
home
it,
for?
right now, we're
You
it
just stay
depends, well,
home
it,
for-
right now, we are taking emergency modifications to the board on next Wednesday. Because prior to that, when the policy was drafted back in 2020, there was no vaccine. So it does not contemplate the fact that somebody who is vaccinated does not have to sit out. So what the new emergency modification will be, if you are exposed and you are fully vaccinated, you are not going to be sent home.
Okay.
So
Unless you show symptoms.
unless you show symptoms. If you show symptoms, because there are breakthrough cases where people are getting COVID and can transmit it, even if they've been vaccinated, you will be sent home for public health reasons. And you're going to be ordered to quarantine by the Department of Health, not by us. We don't have the authority. We can ask you to self-isolate. We don't have the authority to quarantine anybody. Only the Department of Health does per
For
statute.
CDC is if you have an exposure and you're vaccinated, you don't have to.
Correct. That will be after next Wednesday,
Okay.
if the board approves the emergency modifications.
Now, with these strands of COVID, they can follow it, correct? Where it came?
Contact tracing?
Contact tracing, where you...
We do contact tracing, however, if you are at a grocery store or you're go to the movies, you're not wearing a mask, you're eating popcorn and you don't know who the person sitting 4 feet away from you is. So contact tracing is only really good for as long as you know who you were around. And if people are going to restaurants and going to the movies and going to t-ball games and football games and taking their masks off, contact tracing is very difficult because you don't know who you're sitting next to.
Okay. All right, I think we should move on. So bereavement,
Yeah, you had asked that they wouldn't have to provide that information to us. That's just basic information. That I don't know how you wouldn't know prior to taking the leave of who died, how are they related to you, when did they die, and where were they living. That's just basic information. We shouldn't have to wait until after the person returns to find out that they don't have that basic information because they were just taking some time off.
we were fine with yours if we can just change it to should. Because sometimes weird things do happen.
Well,
If you
what
have like
weird
an
things would you be
out-of-state
talking?
death.
Okay, it's an
as far
out-of-state
as
death, but they
dates.
would be able to say, they lived in, you may not know exactly where they died, but they lived in Atlanta, Georgia. You would know where the person, obviously, because this is somebody who is immediate family. I can't think of any situation where you wouldn't know where your immediate family member lived. If you're going to the funeral and have to take all this time off and you're so distraught that, you're having difficulty giving this information.
Go ahead, Alex.
My question is, okay, so you asked for bereavement. My father passed away last year during COVID.
I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. And he actually died from COVID. I called the department, hey, chief, my dad just passed away. I can understand something like that. I need bereavement. But what's the purpose for asking what day, what's the name of the deceased, the death, city, the really,
Because while you had a legitimate reason, we have a lot of employees who don't. We had an employee whose mother's died 3 times.
But I don't understand
And
that.
so
How
if
do you
they
ha-
can't provide that information.
Then how did you have that if you said that in previous meetings, you said that we're the only union in this department?
No, that is not what I said.
You said we were the only ones that had bereavement.
Bereavement.
No, that's not true. Everybody but CTA, I told you everybody but CTA and the non-bargaining units have bereavement leave.
But
And we're in the middle of bargaining bereavement leave with CTA. ASOP, SEIU all have bereavement leave.
When was that? Recently? This last contract?
At least 6 years ago.
Oh, because I could have sworn the last couple
Yeah,
of
I
meetings you
thought so
said that
too.
we were the only ones that had
No,
the
you
bereavement.
have to go back and look now.
Yeah. I just,
There are people who game the system, and,
I
that's
get it,
really
but we
unfortunate, so
also
we're
have,
just,
but we have methods for that too.
Yes.
Instead of putting it in a contract.
There's discipline
We
for
have,
it, yeah.
this is a police department, we have an internal affairs division, we have supervisors. We have ways of, and I'm sure the chief can elaborate on this. We have, if they believe that somebody's trying to game the system, they can start their own investigation to determine the facts.
well, let me ask you this then. What's
Without-
your objection to telling who died? Telling the name of the deceased and how you're related? Do you have a problem with that?
Yeah, I'll use for example, my mother died on July 20th. I'm
Okay.
going to New York to have using my 3 days to bury my mother in New York. I don't, why should I have to go tell everyone who my mother's information is?
You're only telling the supervisor.
Yeah, why should I have to tell them anything? Why should I have to tell them?
Because we're
20 years in
paying you.
NYPD, my
We're
father died.
providing
I
you
have
a
to say,
paid benefit.
his name is Gerald O'Sullivan?
We're providing you a paid benefit. If we
I
weren't
think
paying you,
Would
if
you
we
wanna
weren't
change
paying you,
it
then
to
that's.
HR?
And I agree with you. I think it isn't a big deal, but I think the big deal to us is, why is it so, what's the urgency?
Yes.
I think that's all
Well,
it is.
because we're bargaining this section of the contract right now.
Okay.
So the urgency is that we're trying to get this type of language in all of the ones that have bereavement leave. This will be in CTAs if they get bereavement leave, that they have to provide we're not asking for a death certificate.
No,
A lot of places ask, they want a death certificate, they want a mass
Yeah,
card, they
but
want
after when you
something.
come back or sometime with them.
Correct,
It's a reasonable
but a lot of
time.
places don't have that.
Yes.
You know, people who travel internationally, they don't always do that. There's not an obituary in the paper. We're just asking for basic information. That's why I don't, you
Yeah,
know,
but
if
is
there's
it
an
gonna- would it
objection
change
maybe
the
to the
difference,
city of
though?
death, is that the
Yeah.
objection?
Well-
So, or
I
is
think
it,
it's just, you know,
Can we
not
ask,
all the time.
can I ask a question to the chief? Has this been a problem for this department, for our department?
Trying to keep it from becoming a problem. We have a lot more employees now than we've had before.
Yeah, but
So the incidences are gonna go up.
has it been an issue in the past ever with us?
I can't answer that question, I don't know.
Okay.
Well, since you've been here, has anyone took time off claiming death to a family member, DIF, and it proven to be negligible on their part?
Or false.
But even if they
Yeah.
did though, what's the difference? You gave it to them today or you gave it to them tomorrow? That's what I don't understand. What are you
You
gonna
know,
be
they
able to?
can, you
Yeah.
can require documentation if
Yeah, I
there is,
agree-
you know,
I
some
agree with
point of
you,
concern.
documentation, I don't have a problem with
we're
that.
just trying to solve a problem before it happens, because if they can't provide this basic information, then maybe they shouldn't be taking the leave.
I'm not saying they can't provide it, I'm just, you know, like, it's just, it's insulting, to be honest
It
with
is.
you.
You
You know,
just
you're
lose a
grieving
loved one and
the
be
loss,
asked this.
and to be asked these questions at that moment in time, that's, to me, it's insulting.
It is.
It is very insulting. Now,
Well,
I can understand
It was
later
not meant to
on.
be insulting, and
can
I
under-
would never
can
think
I
that it's
finish, though?
insulting, so.
I understand a week later, 2 weeks later, you're back from your bereavement, you know, then you say, hey, listen, you know, you mind if, you know, we need to, it's just for paperwork purpose, whatever. Then at that point, during the death, you know, a day or two, or the day before, I just found out, you know, moments before I found out my father
They're not
passed, and I
thinking
called
about
my
work.
supervisor to let him know.
That's the real issue.
That's a really
We're not trying
bad
do
time to be
anything
asking for this
weird. I mean, I even
information.
put, you can require
The only question I wanna
documentation.
be asked is, if there's anything I can do for you, let me
Bingo.
know.
Yeah, that's what we need support at that point. We don't need to be checking to make sure that it doesn't, an issue that's never
Not
happened with this
screwing somebody
department
over.
doesn't become something later. There's a time and place for everything. The moment of the death, when you're calling in for the 3 days, is not the time to be asking for this. So that's my point of view.
All right, so is there anything else in 18 that you have issue with?
Page 19, we're fine with that.
There was nothing else in 18 that we,
Yeah, we're fine with the rest of it, 18.
Okay.
Oh, I think that there was a typo on page 21 for the first paragraph that's not stricken for the entire quarter. It should be instead of 9.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we've agreed to do the quarterly, so we
Okay.
can take that out.
Thank you. Okay, so I think those were all of the proposed TAs. And I have the TAs that we agreed on with our edits, if you want to look at them as well.
Well, since we haven't reached with everything, so what we'll probably do is we're gonna,
I can email these to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right. So I wanted to go over 17 and 20, that we've given you proposals on 17 and 20, so we'll go through 17 first. The first change is in 17.1B. Right now, it just says, you know, overtime compensation will be paid on the second pay date. We want it properly documented overtime. We just feel that that's a cleaner way of doing it, so that people know that they have to document their overtime. And in exchange, we've made some movement in 17.
Sorry, hold on. It's a separate PDF
I didn't
from
have.
the, it's on that email.
All right, there wasn't one of these that you printed out for us.
It's
No.
a
No,
separate
it
document.
was sent separately than
Yeah.
sent yesterday.
Printed.
So in 17C, right now, the maximum for comp time is 16 hours. We'll agree to move it to 20. but we do want in exchange that they are limited to code 9004 and may not be earned for work performed under a lease agreement. We've had that discussion before, and I'm not gonna go over that again. We added the language you requested that it wouldn't be, any, the consideration by the chief of police would not be arbitrary or capricious.
I have proposed reasonable, because I think that's arbitrary and capricious is a lower standard.
And
I don't really agree with that, so we'll go back and look. I don't think that that's correct.
And I know that our members aren't happy with raising it only 4 hours and limiting the type.
Yes.
Just that
Well-
you could give it up to a maximum of 480, so.
Well, we feel we've made movement on that versus we're, not making movement. We've made 4 days movement on that. And that's where we are.
4 hours.
20.
Oh, sorry, 4 hours.
We're doing
I'm looking at the next section.
Okay.
17.
So we also made movement in D. So where you had a maximum of 3 hours, we're willing to give you 8, so you could take a full day using comp time. But it has to be made, the request has to be made a week in advance so we can make sure we have coverage. Again, it's not gonna be denied for arbitrary and capricious reasons. In E, rather than having those dates in there, we met with the team. Instead of having that you're gonna have to a certain extent to do it, you'll have to make it, we want the comp time used quarterly, so that it's not being amassed and then people get confused because, wait a minute, I have more comp time than I'm allowed. So they'll meet with their supervisors to schedule and use compensation time quarterly. Then all comp time utilized must be approved by the chief or the designee, period. Then we've added in F, that comp time may not be scheduled or utilized on any day when training is scheduled to take place or on any day immediately preceding or following a holiday or one of the breaks for school, or during the first or last week of school, because those are high needs times when we definitely need our
So what
employees
if you
there.
have time left over then?
Sorry, what?
So what if you have time left over then?
It gets paid out, like it does now.
So I thought you had to use it within the quarter.
You have to use it within the quarter.
That's conflicting with
Yeah.
statute, so.
Yeah. Well, if I may, first of all, we had a discussion about I appreciate the extension of the 4 hours from 16 to 20, but I went over this a couple of times, that there is virtually no 904 overtime, so it's never going to even come into play. So we're totally against that. And like they said, there is a statute of 480 hours, so I wanted to address that on C. Additionally, I'd like to address E, because employers do not have the right to control employee use of their accrued compensatory time, so as long as it does not create unduly disrupt the agency's operation. So essentially, that's a contrary to FLSA, that statement that you wish to implement in E. And additionally, F is contrary to FLSA as well.
So what part of FLSA are you looking at? Do you have a statutory site for that one?
I just read it. I took it verbatim
No,
last
I'm
night.
asking for the site, sir.
Well, I just read it verbatim.
Okay.
You can find it, it's there.
Well,
But basically,
if you have it in front of you, you should have the statute number and what paragraphs you're looking at. That's what I mean by a site. So if you're talking about the FLSA, it is a very large document. I'm looking for the particular section and
correct.
subsection you're talking
And
about.
this section, which I don't have in front of me, actually,
Okay.
I addressed back when, under Chief Kelly and H.C. Green, they wanted to have the same exact thing, and they didn't know about this under FLSA. And I read this same article to them approximately about 9 years ago. So basically,
Right, well-
FLSA says you can't, an employer, unless it's going to unduly disrupt the operations of the organization, cannot tell the employee when they have to take their time off. That's a summation,
Well,
summarize
I'm gonna have to
FLSA.
look at it, because I appreciate you pulling the law for me, but I really want
It is.
to look at the law myself.
I wish you would.
Because when we're just looking, if you just pull a section in isolation without realizing what other headings it's under, sometimes it can be misleading to somebody who's not a lawyer. So we want to look at that. We'll have our legal team draft and look at that.
Yeah, and we got these last night, so.
Okay.
Yes.
Look at it too,
Understood.
and I'll send you.
All right, so the next change is in 17.3. We changed adequate to reasonable, as you requested. We added the language that doesn't limit.
I'm sorry, where?
17.3.
Okay.
That the section doesn't limit or alter the required notice for involuntary transfers. I believe you asked for that as well in 17.3. 17.6, it's just that the school district agrees. Well, that's what the bargaining agreement's about. We don't need that language. It was just unnecessary. So we just started with bargaining members.
So no, on-call pay.
Now, on-call is voluntary. If they don't want to be on call, they don't have to be on call. If it's a problem, they could just say, hey, I need to go on vacation this week. I want to be taken off the on-call list for this week. So the on-call list is voluntary. So we don't see that there's a reason to provide anybody compensation for volunteering. They get paid if they actually are called out. We certainly do pay them for that, but just because so then everybody signs up for on-call and everybody gets paid every single week, just extra money.
Is it all voluntary?
It is all on.
That part, but not the detectives being on call.
Detective?
And the detectives are part of the bargaining unit. I brought it up the last time, and I even read to you department email saying that this detective, you're on call this week, from this week to this week, the following detective.
Right. It was just on the virtual roll call, our first day back, who was on
Yeah,
call?
exactly. It just, they
Detective
just,
Barrios, yeah.
they
Okay,
just,
we'll look into who's on call and why.
what was that,
Do
the Smart Force?
Does management get paid, chief, for your weeks, like you get compensated somehow for when you're on call for those weeks?
No.
Not at all?
I'm on call every day. I don't get paid for it. It's just,
I'm right with you.
All right.
all right, so going into 17.10, we heard what you said about the, this, how we contact people for this outside, before we go to an outside for all these extracurricular functions.
17.1.
17.10, we added, the extra duty will first be offered to additional officers or other officers within their zone, then non-school-based assignments, then district-wide. So that those officers that don't have school-based assignments have an opportunity.
So that still conflicts with the
That still
GEO.
conflicts with department order of sector, zone, and department. And I just had a question. Who falls under the following caption, then non-school-based assignments? What individuals are those?
AC?
Well, those would be detectives for one.
So therefore, according to this, I would have to go to my zone, right, and skip the rest, my zone, skip the rest of the uniformed officers working in schools, and go right to non-school-based assignments. So anybody who's essentially non-school-based assignment is, like you're saying, detectives, and who else would that be? I mean, is it just inside people, like, or people? That's going to be the issue.
I see what you're saying, so, and I think this might be an oversight, because that's not the intent, right? After zone, it should open up to all officers, including other non-school-based assignments. Is that?
Well, we
excellent?
had that, but we were
Sector
asked to
zone
add that,
officer.
we were asked to add that because we had then district-wide, so then that would be, we can talk about that in the
Okay.
caucus.
All right.
And again, this is the department order that was established was something.
Recently, right?
Yeah, under Chief Kitchell, it was a meeting that we had to come up with this, because it changed the contract once the school police did its reorganization to come up with sectors. So therefore, it had to change to reflect the present status of the department. So this is actually what it's doing, it's convoluting it, actually, and it's going totally opposite of what is out there on an order.
Okay.
And then in 17.4, we just talked, this is what we mentioned before, that the seniority wheel that doesn't appear to be, we don't have a real firm grasp on what that is, because we've had that conversation on which overtimes would it apply to and which ones it wouldn't. So we agreed to have a joint study committee to look at that and bring it back to the table.
Okay.
I must interrupt, I'm sorry. It's a very clear, I've done this, I don't know how many of these sessions, it's very clear about where this originated from. This was solely based on school police overtime, 904 solely. And it just came to my attention where if this was in effect, or still in the contract, that it was would have been a clear violation of the contract just recently. If we're going to add people to the Bravo unit, right, I really, this bothers me where it comes to my attention that supervisors are asked, please submit 3 names in your zone who are capable of doing this. So therefore eliminating everybody else in the department, then an individual gets selected for it. He's doing the tour of duty for 5 minutes and said, no, you go home because of your rank, you can't do it. We all agreed here that in our bargaining unit are officers, there are detectives, which is a special assignment, and there are sergeants, which is a special assignment. So everyone in reality is a police officer. So what happened is that this sergeant, and he had the right to be very upset, was selected to do it, and then he's told you can't do it because you're a sergeant. That's not right. And secondly, it's not right when there's a department overtime. If we know that this week's going to be very busy, that therefore, which would happen in the past for Bravo unit, an email would go out to be able to, for everyone to have the right to put in for this overtime where it would have been done by seniority. So this is a prime example of this. And additionally, the last time we had this committee, it was very, very productive. We got it done immediately, and it was a department order which was put out. I don't understand why it has to be put into the contract. This is something that should have to be addressed.
Because you asked for it. Again, this is another thing that we've been hearing.
No, don't hear me out.
Okay.
Why, I want in the contract to have this committee. The results that come out of this committee do not have to be put into the contract. We had a department order in the past. This is
I
something.
think the issue is we lost it, so.
Right, and what I'm saying is that in here, it should be that there should be a committee established. So once that committee meets, when you have 6 people in that room, I think it's asked for 3, 6 people in that room, they could come to an immediate decision right then and there, which would benefit the whole department, as opposed to waiting to have to come back here and put it back into the contract.
Oh, so you're just concerned with it being subject to
Yes.
negotiation again?
Yeah,
Okay, so you don't want it in the contract?
No, I think is concerned with subject to negotiation again, so he thinks it can be handled with a general order since
Yes,
we
that's
can't
what
seem to
happened in the
find
Okay,
past.
because that's not what we've heard before. You wanted it in the contract because it got taken out of the contract before, but we're fine with a GO.
yeah, we want in the contract, but what was not in the contract with the Joints Committee report will be an item of subject to negotiation. That was never in there before.
Okay, so you want the committee, but you don't want what the committee
The
comes up
findings.
with at the end.
We thought that
in
we
the
were gonna
contract.
write out the actual
Can I-
process.
The
Right,
So if
that's
we're
what we were
doing-
going to do because that's what was asked of us. is-
Right, but this is saying a committee instead of the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this was originally in the contract.
No, the joint
back then.
committee's report would become, because the joint committee is going to come up with what they believe to be the best practice. Then it's gonna come back to the negotiation
that's
table. We're gonna negotiate to put it in the contract.
Okay,
That
but
was what
that's-
I understood you wanted. If
No,
you
what
want a
I,
joint
no, what
committee.
I wrote the last time was the actual process, not the committee.
Right,
So-
and then we had, if you remember back, we had the whole conversation about what overtime are we talking about? Because I'm hearing about the leases and non-contract days and this and this and this.
No,
We had a whole discussion about it.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Right, so we needed to know what would that cover, because there are places in the contract where it talks about, it goes by, like you talked about, sector zone or school sector zone, but if you have the wheel, it may not be that way. So we just want to
No,
make sure that,
You're
that's why it
confused.
has
No,
to
you're
come back.
confused. We don't mean that disrespectfully. right?
No,
It-
I
it-
proposed the
No, I can
process.
tell you I'm confused, because we've had
Yeah,
this discussion
and
three
I-
Right,
times
and they're
now,
not
and I hear different
changing our
things every
stance. My
time.
stance was I wrote out the process, and then last time we talked about, I guess, a committee, but if now we're doing the committee,
No,
maybe it would be better in a general order instead of having to
Well,
negotiate it again after that committee.
We already did the committee, we've already done this, and it was
But the
already
committee
established.
has no report to
Well,
show
can I
us, that's
finish?
the problem.
We did the committee, it was established, the district did the committee. Now, the last time we spoke, you said, well, what came out from that? And you said you wanted to see in writing. That's when the attorney from the PBA sent it to you in writing. This is what came out from that. That was
That's
what you
not
said.
how it
And
was-
then the last time we were talking about the different types
Well,
of
that's when the
verbiage.
chief brought up, well, what about this type of overtime? And we said, we'll be willing to work with you on that.
Right, which is why we
So,
created the
But by
committee,
doing
because
it
there
this
was.
way, but by doing it this way, you're taking 2 steps backwards again.
We
Yeah.
just, I think they
So,
just don't want it
we
subject
wrote
to
it as,
negotiation
let
again.
us
Okay, you
sit
don't want
down.
it in the contract.
Right, you just want it in
Okay,
a
that's
general
fine.
order.
Our next proposal will have the joint
But
committee.
it's gotta be
Will
enforceable.
provide,
Yeah, but
and there'll
once-
be
But
a
it can be
general
in a
order
general
that
Correct.
comes out of that.
Can we agree to do it in an MOU once we come with an agreement with the other side? Because
Well,
for it to be enforceable, it has to be in the contract. So by you saying, let's just take it out of the contract,
Well,
you
because
know.
here's my goal, Alex, is that we're not August of next year, we're not bargaining with you guys. I want to start bargaining, as soon as we get this done, I want to go into next year's, because your contract expires again in January. I don't want this delayed like it has been. So.
Well, it shouldn't be delayed once we come to an
If there's a
agreement.
committee here, it has a deadline that it sunsets June 30th, 2022. This is a move, we want to get this moving, get this done, so that as of January 22, my goal, even though this sunsets in 22, that if the committee can meet, I don't care if they're meeting next week, and you guys create it, even before this is adopted, I'm okay with that. I'm trying to solve the problem you brought to the table, and however that can be most expedient. I don't think it needs to be an MOU, because we're right here at the table now. We're gonna be right here at the table again, probably in September, of bargaining the next contract. So, you know,
It's really the avenue, where do you want it written in?
Okay, I
You
just,
want
when
it
I
in a
heard that word,
general
take it out of the
order?
contract,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
you know, I'm
Sure.
thinking differently, that, you know,
Right.
but if that's
I
how it's
understand your
meant,
thought
and we
process.
have it on tape, that we wanted to, it's just to expedite the process, then I'm
process.
no,
okay
no,
with
no,
it.
hold on. That's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing from this end of the table, it can be a GO. You're saying you want it in the contract.
Yeah,
So can your
Well,
side
general
come to
or-
some consensus so we know what
Well,
it actually is
okay,
that
well,
you want?
a general order, obviously, we don't control, the contract doesn't control, the department controls and can change and can do anything they want with the general order. We have no control over it.
Okay.
But if this was something, the seniority wheel, which was already negotiated, and a joint committee occurred, because it wasn't put back into the contract, that's why we're having this issue. The
Right.
end results.
Which is why we said
So
put
when
it in the
that general-
contract, but part of your team is saying
Yeah.
they don't want it in the contract.
We'll
No.
have to talk.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
I just need clear direction on what you guys
I
want.
think clear direction is the following, is to be able to address this immediately, because because what happened the other day, it was just brought to my attention. Again, we got 6 people in the room, 6 rational people in the room like we did last time, came up with a formula which was established for years. If they want to put it on a GO, that's fine, and then we'll put it into the contract. My main goal is to avert what happened to the other day to one of our members, which was unjust. That's all. I want to be able for this to be done in a fair and equitable manner based on seniority, which it was done in the past.
Okay. We'll
Okay,
have to
so
talk.
wait, hold on, let me just make sure, now what I'm hearing now is you want the committee to meet, create a GO,
Right.
and then put it back in the contract.
Yes, so it both
Okay.
jives.
Got it.
And
Understood
then I
that.
want to say, because you guys took out our proposal for outside detail or extra duty work if it's canceled with less than 2 hours notice from scheduled start time, that we propose the officer shall still receive 3 hours of pay at the rate of the detail or extra duty work.
Right,
So
we talked to the leasing people, and according to them, this is an issue between the school and the officer. Because the school should be informing the officer that it was canceled, because if the lease wasn't canceled, and if they're not canceled within a time certain, the school is getting the money, the school should
Correct.
be paying the officer.
Correct.
So for that detail or whatever it is. So it's not something that really we're comfortable putting in the contract. This should be dealt with at the school site. And if we need to send out more memos to the schools and let principals know that if those APs that handle the community and the leases, we'll let them know that they're supposed to, because we already know they're supposed to be alerting you because it's in policy. So we want to make sure that they're following what they need to do.
Well, that would really have no bite, but I wanted to say, we did a poll, and so the poll was, have you ever been signed up for any outside detail or extra duty work that has been canceled with less than 2 hours notice from the scheduled start time of the work between January 2019 to present? So we did all the way back from January 2019. So 61 people answered, and only 21 people were affected. So 9 people, it only happened to them 1 time. 9 people, it happened to them 2 to 3 times. And 3 people, it happened to them more than 3 times.
Okay, so it's not a huge number, but what we can do is if we let, just like with anything else, and, if we find out that there's a lack of communication between the school and the officer, we need to clear that up, because that's where that solves the problem versus creating a mechanism by which the officers are, getting in their car and driving out. I'd rather we stop that process so that they're not being inconvenienced.
But that can be done also. What are we doing about the compensation when it does occur? When the mistake does happen, which is obviously not a lot, and that's why you asked us to do the poll, to get you exact numbers.
Right.
So, okay, I understand, we're gonna correct it, hopefully, by you sending a memo to the principals or whatever, but what do we do when it happens
happens.
anyway?
One time is
I,
too much.
Yeah.
just submit the thing and put it to the school, charge the school like you always do, and let them worry about it after the fact.
That would be my recommendation. Because the school, if
what I did.
the lessee canceled with insufficient notice, the school got paid.
Yeah, because they have the money.
So when the school denies it, the salary,
Right.
you pay for
Not
the
my
3
problem.
hours,
Pay for
and then the department says, well, why are you putting in for 3 hours if it was canceled and you knew it? So now you're opening up the officer to a reprimand or type of,
I think there's just a lack of communication from all parties, then. You need to alert your supervisor that this just happened to me. I'm putting the time in for the school, for the hours that the school got paid for that lease.
but the school needs to sign.
Correct.
Yeah,
And so
overtime.
then you're not running into that issue with saying my supervisor is now saying that I put in for time that I didn't earn. You're communicating with your supervisor all along. So then the supervisor can also step in and talk to the school about, well, what are you doing?
And if it has to go up to the captain who's gonna talk with the regional superintendent about it, about this specific incident, then we can solve the problem. Right, because it's a communication problem typically with a principal.
It's obviously
or
we
an
can't
AP.
solve the problem because this is a problem that's been going on for years.
You just brought it up to us, though, this round of
Well,
bargaining.
but the department's known about this issue for years, and it's never been completely solved in writing. So
So
can
there
we get a
needs to be
commitment?
some kind of
Yeah.
Can we
We're
have
just
it-
looking, yeah,
I
you know
mean-
what it is? I think it is just, we're looking for something that say, can't change this year from next year. Like everything else that in our contract that we have in here that should have been taken care of many, many years ago, even on the simple little things. We just want something in concrete.
It's not a big problem, but we just need a commitment from the other side, from
That's it,
from your
commitment.
side, that says, you know what? I'm
We'll
gonna
back you if we need to.
Management, school police management's is gonna back you on that one. We're gonna give you the 3, we'll
Well,
make sure you
I
get your
just
3
told you the
hours.
process. We'll have the captain go and talk with the regional superintendent. If that's not been practiced before, then that's showing our commitment to get it fixed.
Okay, then we can put that in here. Okay.
All right,
Okay,
going
thank
to Article 20. So in the 20.1, we wanted just clarity because this is their career ladder, we're keeping it in. But we wanted to make clear where the general order was, because this language was, that it was almost as if this language was when they originally put in about where they were still working on the GEO. So the GEO is General Order 26.4 that addresses this issue. So that we thought about putting the whole thing in the contract, but it's a pretty lengthy process. So we just want to refer back to that general order. And that General Order 26.4 should have been underlined.
Can we add the appendix, if that's how you wanna do it? A copy of that general order? Because general orders happen to change.
That's a fair point.
Well, I think we're gonna have to talk about that, because what you've said is the general order, you've been fine with the way it's been running, so,
I know,
Okay,
but
I've
they
been
get
waiting
changed
since-
from time to time.
I've been waiting since March to get mine, and I keep getting told, we're changing things, it's not, there's no consistency. There's not. I've been told now that I'm gonna get back pay for it, but it's taken this long. We're in August now.
Yeah, like I said, general order.
what I would suggest then is that your side provide a proposal for 20.1 with the dual career ladder, explaining the steps as you understand them to be.
He's just saying he wants to attach it so that, to make sure the general order isn't amended.
Correct, but you've already stated that this chief has the authority to revise those general orders. So if you want it cemented in concrete where it can't be moved, you need to provide us with what the language is that you would like to see there.
Well, what is the most recent date of that general order, if you're referencing it? Do you know?
I don't have, do you have that with you, Darnice?
I believe that one of our captains has revamped the thing now, so.
I can pull it up.
There's probably gonna be a new general order. Chief, are you aware of
She
that?
has it?
You mean it was recently amended?
I think it
Well, it has
possibly
an
was.
effect, okay, it has a revised by date, date effective, rescinds, where something was rescinded, drafted by date, staff review date, and other review date. So the latest date on here is the date effective is November 1st, 2012, so I'm assuming that was when that was done, because all the other dates are before that. So the date effective is November 1st, 2012. And
Okay.
it's GO 26.4.
So Mike, are you saying that it was,
I believe that's what was being, I know it was talked about that they were gonna be redoing it. And then that's what I was just told recently,
I
that,
just don't understand what the issue is. Well, why not? If we're referring, if your side is proposing to refer it to General Order 26.4, why not add the appendix?
Because then you're saying that GO can never be changed.
Well, it can be
Oh, it's
changed during
negotiable.
during the negotiation process if it opens up, or put a clause in there saying that if the general order changes, they'll have to we open up that article again to change, you know, but to
Well,
just say
again,
no.
you can
completely.
provide us with the language you want.
But
So-
what good would us providing you with the language on your proposal be if it's
Well, we can take out the general order. To
We
me,
can-
it's just confusing for your team. I would
It's
think
not
that your
confusing if
officers
you
would
add
want to
the-
know what the program is and
Well-
have it cemented. Right now, there is nothing. It doesn't say what GO it is. It doesn't have any detail to it at all.
well, maybe.
We didn't even understand the GO because we'd never seen it up until this round of bargaining, so we had to go get the GO.
Well, can you
So-
email that to me?
The GO, your officer should have it.
Can you send it to me if you have
Sure, we
it?
can,
Okay.
do you have it in the email? I don't know how we got it, if it was hand-delivered
No,
to us.
I don't have it via.
I can get a copy.
Okay, if you could send him a copy, we just have a copy, and
Any
we've got
one of us
notes
can
all
get a
over it,
copy.
so.
We all have
Yeah,
access.
okay.
so our management has an issue with us putting the general order as an appendix.
No, what I'm telling you is, from what you've told me already just today, GOs can change. That's the prerogative of the chief. I'm not gonna take away the chief's authority by putting a GO as an appendix saying it can never be changed.
Okay, so how about?
If you want language to never be changed, it needs to be included
No, it's
here
not
in
that I
the
don't want it to
language.
be changed. So what if you added the words to coincide with whatever GO is out there for that now? Something to that effect, yeah? In other words,
Dominic-
add the
Dominic can
appendix
suggest
as
here, 'cause we're going in
if the
circles
GO
all the time.
changes, you could add it, change that. But we need to be able to see something
I
other
don't
than
see the big deal,
chasing our
whether
tail
we
all the
copy and
time.
paste that or add it
Well,
as an
So the
appendix.
way a GO, when it's written, has to be in compliance with any collective bargaining agreements, right? Otherwise, we're changing something without, right, if it doesn't comply. So the proper way to do this, in my opinion, is that you negotiate what you want in the contract. When the contract's agreed to, the GO is then developed that reflects the terms of the contract. We're doing it out of order,
Right.
and it's gonna create a lot of problems.
I agree with that too. I think it needs to, because if they're adjusting this, we need to be sitting down with them and saying, this is what we should be putting in here as a collective group, management and us.
I agree. So we based this on the fact that we were told there's a GO. So if you want language it's cemented in as to what that looks like, what does that career ladder look like, then provide us with a proposal that sets forth what that language looks like for you.
All right, can we sit down with somebody from the management team then and do it that way?
Well, we can't really do that way. We're in bargaining, that would be direct dealing, and we would be in violation of the law, so we can't do that with you. We
Just-
can,
Yeah,
Okay,
they'll send me
okay,
a copy of
that's
what they
fine.
think is the latest, and then we can.
That's fine.
all right. So
And
moving
can
on.
So if we get this settled though, what would you call it, and I'm just, not, an MOU you said what it was before, so we could just do it, so we don't have to sit down, as long as it's good with you guys
I
and
don't
us guys,
think
we can put it
We
into
can
where.
just
It
put
doesn't
it right
have to
in
be
here.
that complicated.
That's what I'm saying.
All we have to
Well,
do is word
it is complicated, only because the GO is about 7 pages long.
Okay, but
So
what I'm saying.
that's why we didn't put the language, we just referred to the GO, because of that issue.
Yeah, but if you added, forgive me if I'm wrong, but if you added the words to reflect the whatever GO's in
Yeah.
use at
And
that
then-
moment, and just added it, if the GO changes, it changes that
And then we
page,
can
the
change it
appendix.
together.
I
But
think
see,
the
we
appendix
can't,
is a
we
good
can't
idea.
legally do that, the board has to approve it, you have to ratify it. We would have to have, I don't think.
coincide with the-
Obviously, these haven't changed very much since the last time it was changed was 12. So it doesn't seem that it's changed, but as the chief said, the standard practice is we put it in the contract,
All right.
And then the GEO would reflect what's in the
Let's just do it that way.
contract.
Let's just do it that way. That's fine.
So going to 20.3, we have assignment pay. We left the canine trainer with the 2,800, only because they're dealing with the canine is a finite period of time. We did add down here for the canine caretaker handler, they're gonna be paid an additional 1.5 hours per day at a rate of $15 per hour, the state minimum wage, whichever is greater. For each dog they're assigned, its per pay period is compensable time for the care of the assigned canine. So that addressed the issue that you wanted. It's a different job, so we didn't feel it was appropriate to give the standard hourly rate of, for an officer being in a school for, care and feeding, bathing, walking a dog. So that's why it's the $15 per hour.
So
We did some rough numbers with the team, and they came back with it's an hour and a half a day that those officers are spending with the canines for care and maintenance.
So you don't want it to apply to their overtime?
No.
Okay, I don't know if
This
we're-
is really a
Yeah, no.
different job. This is a
It's
different,
$22.50 a day.
Because under law, I mean,
Yeah.
it should be encompassed in their overtime calculation.
well, we'll talk about that, of whether we're gonna include that hour and a half per day as part of their, it would be calculated for their 40 hours when they reach that.
Because a lot of them make more than,
Yeah.
$15 per hour.
Yeah.
Correct.
Did the district have the time to review the Garcia ruling?
We looked at it.
Okay.
And we feel that because when we looked at the ruling, it talked about that the officer would have to show exactly how many hours
Correct.
that they were spending with the canine. We've got the information, and they're spending about an hour and a half a day with the dog, doing it for care and maintenance purposes.
Right. And in the Garcia ruling, it was, and some departments go above that, it was 30 minutes of overtime of day for the care of the dog. And what I did is I just did round numbers of saying that most of our members, actually, most of our members who are in canine probably would even make more money than this because they with their senior members. If you take $50 an hour, just round figures, and you do it by 30 minutes, that'd be $25 an hour, times 365 days, that's $9,125.
How did you get the 1.5 hours per day?
For talking to our officers, so, and we're not looking at Garcia, we're looking at Levering, Levering versus District of Columbia, where they talked about the appropriate time being 30 minutes per day, 7 days a week. For this, in our situation, part of that calculation was based upon evidence in that particular case, with an officer being able to show how much that they were spending, the time they were spending. There was 30 minutes per day in Levering. We're giving an hour and a half.
Right, and I know
So we're going
Levering-
above and beyond what the case law said.
Well, I think it still may be more, even for 3.5 hours of pay per week.
And
even,
you
because
guys
it's
are-
at the
are
overtime
canine
rate.
guys?
So that's why I put 3.5 hours, because I knew that case.
We received information from Lieutenant Baxter, and we talked to the chief about it,
So it wasn't the guys that are actually handling
or
it.
Major
they're-
Baxter, sorry.
They were queried on the time they spent.
All right, we'll get back to you on that, because that's why I put 3.5, because I know that case, so that would be 3.5 hours per week.
Right, and we're looking at 1.5 hours per day.
Right, but it's at $15 per hour or minimum wage, so.
Well, we can do the calculations. If you'd rather have them get less time per day, I'm not sure it's gonna make that big of a difference.
Okay, well,
But we'll
we'll
look at
talk
it, and
about
we'll
it.
figure out, do some calculations and figure out. But we felt that that was an appropriate, and we thought it was a reasonable,
So you did a poll with the canines?
Yes.
Okay.
the salary adjustment in 20.5, you had where you were raising the minimum to 3.5 in your proposal. It's not, it's raising the minimum of 2.5. So any officer who's currently working for us will get 3.5. Anybody coming in after it's ratified gets 2.5. We
Right,
raised
we
the minimum
wanted it
so we don't
even.
have compression, because otherwise then the new officers are always getting chased by the officer who just walked in the door. That's standard for all of our contracts. We don't raise the minimum the same amount as the raise, because otherwise the person who just walked in the door and the guy who's been with us a year are gonna make the same hourly rate.
What do you guys think about
So
that?
that savings of that 1%.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of savings, it's about compression. You guys talk about compression.
I get it, I
The only way
understand.
we fix compression is not doing
I
that.
understand,
Do you have a
but
concern with compression?
We do.
We did.
But by that, it's handling the compression. But the savings, there's also a savings that comes
It's
with that.
minimal at
But there's
best.
also a savings that comes with that, 1%.
Well, I mean, we could put it at 3.5, but then you have a compression issue, so.
Or how about we make,
Why would
as
it be a
opposed,
compression issue if you put it, if you put that extra 1% at a 3
If we
point?
put it at 3.5
To
at the
change the
beginning.
3.5 to a 4. If
So you
put that
wanna
one-
have the guys coming in get a 4, and then you guys
No.
get 3.5? Oh, you
That's-
guys want, we can't give you more than 3.5, because that's what we've budgeted. All the other contracts have a Me Too provision in it, because we're so late getting to yours.
But unless we
If we give you
self-fund it.
4, teachers are getting 4, staff
But
is
unless
getting
it's
4,
self-funded,
SAU and
then
ASAP are
1%
getting 4.
savings is a funding.
Money.
It doesn't work that way.
I thought we did that in the past.
We've done that in the
We did
past
in
when
the
the
past.
unit was much smaller. The
So
unit
it
is
could
no
work
longer
that
that
way.
small where we're able to do that. We have given Me Too, and we usually don't have Me Too provisions. But because there were delays in some of the bargaining because of COVID and whatnot, we have Me Too clauses in everyone, which means that if we give your officers a 4% increase, that's what this would be.
But
It's not
didn't you do
moving it
that-
around from taking the 0.5 for the few officers who are gonna be hired versus the size of your unit now.
It's not
It doesn't
0.5, it's
cover.
1%.
Or 1%, it's still not gonna cover the officers, it's just not gonna stretch that way. I mean, if everybody was at the same level of experience, yes, but you're not.
Are
So it's not, that 1% that we allegedly save when we hire people does not cover giving an additional 0.5% to everybody else.
Okay, what about
It
a
just
quarter
doesn't work
percent
that way.
then?
You're saying move the money around in
Yeah.
your own piggy bank.
Correct.
Just
Aren't
your
the,
own
um,
funding.
We cannot do that because we have Me Too provisions in all the other contracts. If we do it at this stage,
Aren't they-
then all the other units
But
get it
did
as
you
well.
do that in the past with the Me Too provision?
We didn't have the Me Too provision, we don't have those every year. It just depends on the year and who's bargaining at what point.
Aren't the teachers mandated on what they started by the state?
They have a starting salary, yes, but everything else,
So they don't have a increase? You don't have a starting increase for them?
no, we don't have a starting anymore because the state told us how, the state regulates also how we give raises to teachers.
Okay,
I mean, if you would like that, we can.
No, I'm just asking a question, didn't say that's what we would like.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
asking
so
you a question.
teachers are limited because like if you have to get, and I
Okay,
don't,
but I
I don't
do,
remember the
because so
math,
if I
but like
want
the
that-
effective teacher, I think has to get like 75% of what the highly effective, something like that. So if we pay it, and I'm horrible at math, everybody knows that. So if I pay $1,000 to a highly effective teacher, the effective teacher only gets $750. And then the ones that are below effective don't get anything at all
I have
because statute, the way it's a very different system. It's mathematically required of how we do that.
I have a question / suggestion.
Well, that's where they get their bonuses from.
No, no.
What about the $10,000 at the end?
That was the
Yeah,
referendum money that we also used in order to hire the officers that we have for your department.
That 1% that's lost now, not lost, but it's a savings, because the district,
It was never a savings.
Well,
Your
if
team,
we're not giving it to if we're not gonna be giving it to the slots that we have allocated to hire for, so it's a savings of 1%.
you're operating under a false premise. That lower number was never 3.5. Your team put 3.5 there. Our
Right.
budget number was 2.5 from the very beginning.
She's saying that she did that because of the compression.
Yeah, but the actual.
There is no savings, Alex, because what we put the money aside based on the minimum being 2.5 and everybody getting 3.5. That is what we have budgeted for. What proposal we got from you was a minimum of 3.5, and what we're telling you is we did not budget for that. And the budget year closed on June 30th.
Okay.
How
So we
many
don't-
new officers were hired this year?
Can you answer that, AC?
Not to the exact
No.
number.
And we
Do you
didn't
have like
increase
an
the top out.
estimate?
An estimate of the number in the last 12 months,
Or do you guys?
35 maybe?
Do you have an
Last 12
estimate?
months?
Do you have an estimate of how many left in the last 12 months? How many left or were just separated from this department?
20 maybe?
I was told
20
40.
maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was,
Like I said, I'm not saying
Right.
these are accurate numbers.
Great, just,
no,
okay.
But our top out didn't increase though. Is that correct? Is that correct, our top out?
It increased by 2.5%, the top,
The top did.
correct. But again, I kind of want to point out to the proposal we got from you guys.
Right, I
Has-
put 3.5 for both.
Right.
Okay. No, I understand now.
Okay.
Question of that, the salary adjustments and the salary, that's with the 3.5, right?
Correct.
Okay. What's the holdup with releasing this money?
We don't have a signed agreement.
Okay, but can we,
It'll be retroactive.
It's
I
retroactive.
get it's
to- yes.
retroactive, but we have officers that are single parents, and they're struggling to make their bills right now.
Right, and if we
have
can
the
get an
cost of living,
agreement,
and they have a cost of living that's gone up 5% so far this year. And we're tying up this 3.5% that you have allocated and earmarked for these officers and have the money waiting for them.
let me explain
So
labor
can-
law to you,
I'm still not
Alex. You
finished.
can't-
You keep
we cannot
interrupting me.
pay
You
in
don't like it
violation
when
of the
you're
contract.
interrupted, but yet you do it every single time I speak. So
Go ahead,
please, let me
Alex.
finish. Why can't we just separate this from the rest of the contract, get these officers the 3.5% that they're waiting for, and get them their checks?
So are you going to have two
Instead of-
ratification votes?
We'll have to ratify. That doesn't matter. We've had it every
We'll have
year
to
so
talk
far.
about that.
No, pursuant to 447, we can't just institute and pay officers when you guys haven't agreed to it. The board has to approve it, has to go to a board member, the board approves it, your team has to take that proposal and then ratify it. Yes, it's a full contract, usually we can just do this,
But we
but
brought
we're
it up
hung up on a bunch of language. And until we get the language solved, we can't just give you the money. So once we get everything solved, we can go ahead and do the retroactive to January 1st of 2021. That's in the contract.
Yeah, but just to add to that, in the past, like always, we were able to settle the money before the rest of the contract. This time, your side tied it up and would not release it.
Well, that was
So don't make it
okay.
sound
for
like,
a full reopening.
That is
For the
completely
full
inaccurate.
contract.
we asked for it the last time we negotiated, didn't
Okay,
we?
Alex,
That's the
To
first.
separate it.
what we did last time was we bargained just for salary. We offered that to your team. We said, we'll come in with salary only. We got 3.5%, take salary only.
No.
No, we want the full book. We can go back and
No,
look at all the
You're
negotiations.
wrong. You're wrong, and I can prove it. We have the tape.
Okay, you can,
we've
I'm
had-
fine. If you can
we've
show the tape where I said that we are not
We've
interested in doing 3.5
separated it
salary
before.
only.
We've dealt with the contract separately from the raises. We gave the raises and we dealt with other articles
the
later.
full-
Great, the next.
During the full reopening of
then
this
That
contract.
is not true.
We have.
With
We'll talk
Larry, we
about
did,
it.
all due
Okay,
respect.
then maybe you did that before I came in,
Yes.
but since I've been here,
We
that has
did it with
never
Mr.
happened.
Ludi, with Van Ludi. We did the raise, the appropriate raise at that time, I think it was 2.5%. We did the money first because the officers were pressuring us to get the money, which they're doing now, is they got their money, and then we negotiated the rest of the open contract and.
I think, I know what you're talking about. This was not a regular reopener, though. In March of one year, we had either an increase in student enrollment or something happened where we got more money into our budget than we anticipated. And the superintendent said, I have 2%. I want to give it to everybody. We went to the teams and said, we have 2%. Can we just talk money? We'll give you the 2% now because when we did the regular negotiations, we weren't able to give you anything.
What
And
year?
so we found
What year?
something, there was some budget
What
movement. It was,
year?
Oh, geez, I
it
honestly
had to be
can't
at
remember.
least 5-6 years ago, maybe?
I believe, it actually was when Mr. Ludi was here.
Right,
and-
so it had to be longer than 6 years, because
Yes,
I've been doing it
yes.
for that long
It
now.
was definitely under Mr. Ludi, yeah.
Right, so it was probably between 13 and 16, somewhere in there maybe, that occurred. And it was in March, it wasn't part of regular bargaining,
Okay.
we just came to the table, we contacted every unit and said,
Okay.
we've had an increase in our budget, we got 2%. So it wasn't regular bargaining, it was different. This is regular bargaining, we have a full book.
That's
And
probably
it-
what you're thinking.
Oh,
You know,
And we had that
We'll
one year.
talk about
Yeah.
it more. Okay.
all right. So in 20.5D and then 20.6, those are the provisions we added, the little brackets there of where we moved them to.
Right.
Because those went into 27. So those were taken out. The next change we've already talked about is in 20.10, we're just, instead of the Glades supplement, it's the West supplement, because we're no longer referring to it the Glades, because it encompasses more than just the Glades, it's the West area.
Okay, so you guys are set on not giving them the 2 options for the pay plans?
Well, we can talk about that, I believe we had,
Where's that?
That's what we proposed.
Yeah.
in your
right,
proposal
well,
schedule.
okay, let me go back. So we can't do 24 pays for you, because I remember we talked about having some committee to look at it and see what it costs. The 24 pays works my glasses keep fogging up. The 24 pays works if you work 10 months out of the year and you don't work all year long intermittently. Once you start working, there's officers, they're, like you said, they're working the 11 days in June, the 11 days in July. They're gonna get 26 pays
Well-
because of those days in June and July. Otherwise, we can't pay them.
26 or 22?
They're 26, either one. If they're less than 26 pays, we can't pay them in June and July because they wouldn't get any money in June and July until they came back in August. Because the 26 pays is every other week of a 52-week year.
'Cause-
So if you go shorter because of if you want, if you don't want to get the 11 days every month, then we can do 22 pays, but otherwise we can't do that.
Yeah, the reasoning behind that was the following, is that we just had, what I heard at training, 40 people leave from January, and if someone, there are people here that already know they're going to leave very shortly. So if we had the 22 pays, they would leave and not have to write a check for a couple $1,000s back.
No, and I
That-
understand that. We have that with lieutenants when somebody gets promoted out of the unit, depending on what time of year, because the way we smooth the pay. The only way to do that is positive pay. Positive pay, we talked about doing it for SEIU. You don't want it, and I'll tell you why. Because you're only working 2 weeks in December because we're closed for winter break. So because of the delay in the checks, because, we have the 2 weeks, and we saw with the bus drivers, you're not getting paid in January. You're gonna work the whole month before you get paid for 2 weeks. Because of there's a 2-week delay in the paychecks. So when you do, we don't, and most districts do this, the smoothing of the pay, so that you have regular checks and you can expect it. So like, you get hit hard at Thanksgiving, you get really hard at Christmas, and you get hit at spring break because we're
Right.
closed. So that's why we had it in SEIU, and it was gonna be an opt-in thing, and everybody would be grandfathered in eventually, and they would just be positive pay. For record-keeping purposes, it's a much better system, but it financially impacts our employees. It's harder you would have to be, you'd have to have the fortitude to budget for yourself, because then
Yeah.
otherwise, January comes and Christmas bills and, holiday bills are coming in, and you're not gonna get any money.
Yeah, because I learned that from one of our senior members who had said years ago they would get 22 pays and that they would not get paid over the summer. So what I did, I brought it up to Mr. Childers. I said, and he had knowledge of that. I said, if we reverted back to that with our members who know they're going to leave and have left, and some more, quite a few more are going to leave, would that preclude them from have to pay back? Some people paying back $5,000, I saw.
Right.
And his answer was yes. So that's what that's where this all originated
Yeah,
from.
because there's times of the year, and I'd have to ask the budget people, there's times of the year where the people who are hourly employees, you're actually being paid more than you're
Yes.
making. And so, and there's
Substantial.
times of the year where you're getting paid less than what you're working because of that smoothing of the pay, so that you have regular checks.
Right.
It just helps our employees manage their money better, so that you know exactly what you're gonna be getting pretty much in every paycheck, except for overtime. We tried it. What we can do is I can have them show you what we did for the bus drivers and show you, obviously the pay scale is different, but we can show you what your checks then look like.
I think it would be a good thing for those who know that they're going to leave to have an opt-in, so that when they choose to leave, they don't have to owe any money back to the school district.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but they would also we'd have to reprogram PeopleSoft to do that, and for the number of people we're talking about, it would be really an inefficient use of time and resources to do that. Particularly because, like I said, January, they're gonna work the month of January and get paid for 2 weeks at the end of it, because, and in December, because of Thanksgiving, their paycheck is gonna be skewed. So those months where people really wanna have the extra cash coming in, they're gonna be making far less than they do now. Just because they're only getting their hourly rate, they're not smoothing that out.
Okay.
Well, how many people are we talking about?
Last year was 40. I don't know. I'm thinking, I know 10 guys. That's why I'm bringing this up, because,
We have a
excuse me, 10 officer, I apologize, my slang, is that, again, it's just depending on the months, because I recently have obtained it from an officer, that this individual would have to pay $6,000 to leave at this time. So the only time for an officer to leave where he or she would owe virtually nothing, and it's in June, but this person owed
June 30th.
$1.15. So that's what is the problem, because people are going to leave, they're just trying to lessen the blow.
All right, so we're actually over our time right now, but I'm going to go quickly through 20.11. We've made huge changes to our proposals for 20.11, the sergeant special duty assignment. We've been listening to what you were talking about, so, but we still have some concerns. So going through the qualifications, we added they can come in with two different ways of qualification for years of service. One is 5 years of continuous law enforcement, inclusive of at least 2 continuous years with the district. So they could have been with another entity for 3 years and with us for 2 and qualify, or they have 5 years of service with us, so that we know that it's a law enforcement officer with at least 5 years. Then we have, we added the no record of formal discipline, because we know there was some concern about whether coaching would be considered so, and we added Article 29 there, so it would be only those things listed in 29 that could
Can you explain the first one a little bit more? I'm not sure if I understand that.
Okay, so right now, they have to have 5 years with the district.
Right.
We're hiring some officers that are coming in with incredible supervisory experience in other agencies. As long as they've worked for us for 2 continuous years, they could meet that requirement as long as they have 5 overall. So if I was at, the city of Boynton Beach for 3 years, and then and I was a supervisor there, and I came here, and I've worked for 2 years here, that would be sufficient to cover that first piece. They have 5 years.
You mean 5
3
years of just
It's 5 years of
experience
law
as a
enforcement, but
supervisor?
2 of them have to be continuous with us.
But
So
that-
they could pick up 3 somewhere else, or they could have 5 continuous years with us.
See, that, going with your 18-month probation that you want to still keep, so you're saying that you need to keep them for 18 months probation, and then 6 months after probation, you can be a boss now.
Correct.
That's very,
If this was in effect right now, some of the detective supervisors wouldn't even be eligible.
Well, they would either have, if they had the 5 years of supervisory with the district, they would.
No, we have someone who's, well,
Yes.
Okay, so this is our proposal. Going into the second bullet, we added formal discipline. We know there was concern about what that looked like, what were we talking about. We put in parentheses Article 29, so they would know that it has to be something that's in Article 29 to qualify there.
So you will, in 2 weeks, notice for the test?
Well, let me go on, you're missing some stuff here on the qualifications as well. So in the third bullet, we had, instead of having to have completed the line supervision course, particularly now with COVID, it's difficult to get the training that you need, that the person will successfully complete it within the 12 months of receiving the assignment. So if they're named sergeant, if they don't already have it, they have 12 months to get that. And we're looking at maybe creating some line supervision courses internally to make it easier, because it's very difficult, for people to get training because of the pandemic. We took out the educational requirement, getting into the examination and oral interview. Because we have taken this, when we talked last time, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but your side said that you were okay because the cost of this test is about $10,000 every time we try to move it forward.
Well,
That we were okay with the exam created by the chief, is what we were told last time, because we had the whole conversation, well, as long as he doesn't give out the answers.
But that's not right, because we did a records request and it only cost $4,500.
Well, we were told it's 10,000.
It depends on the vendor and the quality of the work.
Right, so we did one for the last test given, which was a while ago, and it was
With the oral.
$4,500.
Okay. I can only tell you the information that I'm given. I was told it's about $10,000. We had, from your side, had said you're okay with the chief creating the exam.
under the impression that the test was costing tens of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars is what we were told.
We
But now
didn't
that
know
the
that.
records request came back, and we know for a fact that the department paid less than $5,000 to hold the exam with the oral board, I think that,
Well, I'm going to spell out the rest of our proposal, if you don't mind. I mean, I think we've made substantial movement, because if you think about where we started out with striking the whole thing, taking it all out, we've made significant movement. We wanted 14 days because it is a district-created test. The test is going to be based on the work that you're already doing. It's not from some vendor who doesn't understand necessarily the work you're doing. So we felt like a 45 days, and it says at least 45 days. So it can be, or 14 days. It can be more than that. It could be 45 days. We're going to get a 45-day notice. It just depends on the needs of the department. If we have a special need that we need more supervisors at a particular time, it gives us a shorter time window in which to get these officers approved. We just changed around the language here on the third bullet for examination oral interview to set up the date. The 24 months, it seemed kind of loose about from when they were considered to be a candidate. We're not sure what that really, how you would cement what that date was. So it would be the date they received the score. So the day they get the 80% or higher, that's the date from the 24 months that the score would be good for. Then going into the last one, on page 9, the top of page 9, it had department command officer selected by the chief and at least one non-district law enforcement. Apparently that causes some problems of getting people who are qualified to be on the oral interview panel. This frees it up by having department command staff members. It would mean somebody within the department that is considered this command staff.
So, civilians, or,
Correct, it could be a civilian.
okay.
Because right now, we do have in there that it says at least one non-district law enforcement personnel selected, so it's somebody that's outside the district. In this case, it would be people would be within the district, because there are civilians in higher levels of command, and it is command staff. It's not, we're gonna pull somebody off a dispatch to come in and who's answering the calls to come in and be part of the panel. It's command staff.
So what positions would that include?
I'll give you an example, would be Director Powell's position, Director of Police Administration.
And then who else?
Well, I guess we're looking at other civilian positions in the future, so, I mean, in my mind, that's the only one that meets the criteria at this time.
And then the last piece was that, and we've shown this before in D, the last piece is, it says they're eligible to supplemental pay, and and the take-home vehicle. Almost all of our officers have take-home vehicles now. It's not just sergeants, because that language was put in when only sergeants had the vehicles. And that's, our proposals. So unless you wanna sign off on those today?
On the other TAs? Not Tony?
no.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you obviously you need more time with your team to discuss 2011? Okay.
Yeah.
When we meet on Monday, we'll be back to the district offices.
Oh, what does the district have in place on 2011 to keep it fair and equitable and not do the friends and family like you brought up before?
Well, they still have the test, they have the oral interview.
Well-
I mean, all we're doing is making it a little more, making it easier to do the test more frequently and to open up the pool to more officers. From my understanding, some of these requirements and qualification limited to less than 5% of your unit that would be even eligible.
Well, but
This
that's not
broadens
what-
the pool.
That's not by our fault. They've had plenty of years to hold an exam,
But I
and they
don't
chose
really
not to.
see the issue with an outside vendor now, knowing that it was only $4,500 and it only has to be given every 2 years, so.
Well, again, we had discussions last time, and, if I can't trust what's being told to me at the table, it's a
Well,
problem
we couldn't
because,
trust either, because we were told hundreds of, tens of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars, so.
well, that's the information based on what we were given.
Okay, well, then you were given bad information then.
Correct.
So we didn't know either.
Yes.
So,
So
but-
let's
well,
not with this trust issue, come on, that's several times you said that today.
Well, because now this
That's
is the
again a
second time
really-
we've had a proposal where it's
We
different than what we were
misunderstood, it was a
given.
Written
misunderstand.
proposals since June, so.
Right, for these two provisions, we have, we're running a school district beyond just
We all have
bargaining with
other
you.
responsibilities.
And I understand that, so, but we give you the proposals as soon as we get the direction and where we're gonna go with these. So we've provided you with the proposals, we are gonna be bargaining again on Monday, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, will do.
One question before, because I've been, the proposals that you had given us, who was involved with the creation of these proposals?
We had a meeting, when was that? We've had several meetings with the command staff. We had with Director Powell, with Chief Alexander, with AC Weiner, my team. I'm not sure if there's anybody else. I think that was it that has been involved. We have a briefing. We do a PBA briefing after we've had negotiations. We'll have another one probably Friday with the chief. We go over what proposals we've been given, where we are. They give us guidance, and we move forward from there.
Okay. I'm gonna send you these TAs
Thank you.
today.
Okay.
for the
All right,
writer.
thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, staff at 10, for
Yes.
hosting
Yes,
us
Thank
today.
you,
you.
thank you.
Oh, yeah, right.
Thank you. Sorry we went a little over.